Hello, hello. Little by little, day by day, I'm getting the hang of working this thing. Give me some ones in the chat if you can hear me, or actually give me anything. The That's the other thing too, is just a matter of knowing that we can be reaching people and impacting people. I've got some thoughts that pretty much anybody who's ever done any type of speaking understands you're going to miss things. You're going to have stuff that you want to hit, and then you're just going to miss it. And then you're going to be back, wait a second, I wanted to cover this and I didn't. And I have a challenge with that probably greater than most people, just because once my mind gets going, as Alyssa said, I've been just immersed in the context of personal development for probably 30 years, which is kind of interesting because anybody who doesn't know this already, I was a student in high school, never went to college, but in high school, I was smack dab in the center. I was not top of the class. I wasn't bottom of the class. I just kind of got by. And then right out of high school, my philosophy was, okay, I'm just going to go to work, and did really, really well. I mean, coming out of the gates, had a lot of challenges along the way. Everybody does. Nobody doesn't. But along the way, I got introduced to, I guess, the networking industry is the easiest way of wording it. And my first career path was as a professional firefighter. So I put my time into that. And any time that I had that was downtime, I was learning and growing. I was studying stuff. I became almost obsessed, almost like Napoleon Hill would call a magnificent obsession, personal development. And as a result, it's like some people are like, man, you're really gifted. You've just got this skill. And I'm like, no, I am average. And I really firmly do believe that. I'm just a normal person. And what happens is, one of the greatest laws in life is you become the people you associate with in the books that you read. That'll never change. I don't care if it's 1,000 years ago or anytime into the future. You will become the people you associate with in the books that you read. So if you're constantly flooding your mind with growth and development, spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, you name it, you continue to grow. But that's really what life is. Life is about growth. It's ultimately about literally development, personal development, because none of us has a single clue of what we're capable of. We set our own limitations, and unfortunately, our limitations are really, really lower than they should be. So on that note, I want to just throw an idea out here. This is something I wanted to mention last week. This is something I wanted to mention the week before. It was every now and then I come across these interviews of Elon Musk, and I mention him a lot just because of the fact that as of right now, to my knowledge, he's like the richest person on the planet. So it really goes to say he's probably doing something right. And I also mentioned the fact that the guy took himself from like a $22 million net worth to $243 billion in just a couple of decades, which is, and what if he would have settled, because in life we get what we settle for. So again, what Alyssa had mentioned is, I have this tendency just to throw out quotes because I don't try to, they're just there. They just fit. That's one worth writing down. But what a lot of people don't know is I rewrite this stuff down daily. I will rewrite it down daily as a constant reminder, because we as human beings have so many ridiculous distractions in life. We have the tendency to forget. And what I wanted to mention in this interview, he had talked about what he called the 100-hour work week. I mean, really, if you had a job and you were paid hourly, or you were salary and you had a 100-hour work week, and if you were doing something you were passionate about, you'd probably quit. You'd probably say, this isn't worth it. There's no balance in life. And I've mentioned before that when you aspire to do something great, there is no such thing as a balanced life. And ultimately, what blows me away still to this day is the fact that we have the ability, every single person who's on this call, anybody who has the ability to watch this recorded, we all have the ability to accomplish something in literally 12 to 18 months. I think it's even more like 90 days. I think any single person has the ability to completely transform their lives on a scale they can't even comprehend in a 90-day period. And what that should do is that should really, really motivate you, because the fact that we end up ultimately losing vision. Okay, and we don't, but when we see something can be done in a shorter time frame, it's easier to really put your head down and go to work. But here's the interesting thing. This was his takeaway. His takeaway out of this 100-hour scenario was, based on the hours that you work and effectiveness, you would end up generating the revenue in 4 months that takes somebody else a year. So again, it's not about the money. What it is, it's literally time. I would rather work my tail off, almost the definition of an entrepreneur, for a span of, say, 4 months, or even look at 4 years versus 40 years. Okay, 4 months versus a year. And then you have that freedom, you have that time. You know, Greg Jones had mentioned to me the other day that he was streaming this event out of Houston on Colors. And I'm like, what day is it, Saturday or Sunday? And he said Sunday. I says, cool, I'll book a flight. And he didn't believe me, of course. But anyway, so I just basically booked a flight. And just like that, that was on Thursday. And then Sunday, I was in Vegas. And I had challenges along the way. The flight got delayed coming out of where I'm from. And it got delayed. And then it got delayed. And it got delayed. But the reality is, without challenge, there is no achievement. And ultimately, there's nothing more powerful than a made-up mind. These, again, are ones you want to write down. Nothing more powerful than a made-up mind. Instead of saying, okay, this ain't going to work, my connections are messed up, I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to drive to Minneapolis, and then I'll catch that flight. And then I called on the way and made some changes, and I was able to arrive in Las Vegas and spend some great time. We logged so many hours going through different trainings, the seminar. There was other stuff that was going on. We caught the Monday session at 5 o'clock Central. It was 3 o'clock in Vegas. And, you know, ultimately, in the meantime, we were doing a lot of trading too. We were using colors. We were using the setups that were on there. And then I was able to come back yesterday morning. And just to have that, that's really what ultimately everybody should have. Is you are not free in this country until you are financially free. That needs to motivate you every single day. And if you don't write that down every single day, first time I heard that was 25 years ago. If you don't write that down every single day, you're going to forget. You just get in the survival mode of ultimately, okay, I'm just going to, you know, get by. And then this is what I have to do. We all have goals. The problem is our goals are limited. So before I also forget, I want to mention a quote that I came across yesterday, because here's the interesting thing. This was very, very almost disturbing to me to a certain degree, because it's like when I'm traveling, I have my earpiece in and I see everybody. I see all these people. They're either just bored or they're staring at their phones, probably social media. And it's like this hour that you have, once it's gone, you never get it back. It is gone forever. And this has to be a daily reminder for you. And it's like, ultimately, I have the chance to spend time with myself and be distracted and not even really have a conscious control over what I'm doing. Or popped in my head, Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey's the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Any single person who has never read that book, you need to go get it. Anybody that doesn't have an Audible, you need to get it. This thing's like 25 years old. But the principles in this book are timeless. They will blow you away. And ultimately what happens is, so here I am, I just put Stephen Covey on. And for like 3 hours, my flight went by like that. It was like nothing. And I was with Stephen Covey the whole time. I've got my journal laid out in front of me. I'm taking notes as he's talking, because what goes through you sticks to you. Okay, so ultimately I'm taking notes as if the man's sitting in the chair next to me. Okay, here's the interesting thing. Stephen Covey's passed away, but yet here he is sitting in the chair next to me. And he left so many nuggets of wisdom, and I'm able to, and it'd be really neat to have that impact. Imagine being gone at some point in the future and having somebody be able to spend some time with you and hang out and take notes on stuff that you learned or whatever else. But he really made a really powerful quote that's in here. He said, our most important financial asset is our capacity to earn. Okay. Now think how that applies to what we're doing here. Our most important financial asset. He's not talking about trading accounts. He's not talking about investment, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. He's not talking about a job, salary, getting a pay increase, getting 20% pay, finding other entrepreneurial opportunities. He just said our most important asset is our capacity to earn. You might want to write that one down, because again, I always come back to this. Every single person has 2 ways to generate revenue. You're going to go have a job. You're going to maybe work harder, put in more hours, potentially burn out. Wallace Wattles, The Science of Getting Rich, had mentioned that you have to do all that you can each day without burning out. Okay, because if you think about it, I promise you that out of 24 hours every single day, 1,440 minutes, if you look back, most of it's wasted. Most of it's unaccounted for. Where the cool thing is, I can grab my earpiece and I could sit here and just go hour after hour after hour with Stephen Covey. And then just to break it up, I'll throw on some Spanish. Así que yo puedo hablar español con la gente. And it's really kind of cool, because it's just like, I never really took classes in school and that type of stuff, but yet I've been doing that for 20 some years. So it's the idea of being able to do just a little bit every day. Anything that you accomplish in life, any worthwhile achievement, ultimately comes down to doing a little bit today, just a little bit today. Yesterday's gone, tomorrow's promised to nobody, but you just focus on what you can do today. And then literally accountability. Just put it down. Put it down. That's literally, I don't care if it's what you're eating, because nothing has a greater impact on the way your body looks, feels, or functions than what you feed it. But then ultimately also the mental growth. So it's like I put stuff down in my calendar. I literally have right now, as we speak, Stephen Covey in my calendar, because I spent another couple hours with him today. So it's no different than I'm meeting with him one-on-one. It's that type of mindset. And that's literally what that's why if you go back through the history of these recordings, as it will continue to do so, I'm always giving, aside from giving quotes, I'm giving different authors. I'm giving people the books that I've read, the audio programs. And I promise you, if you study anybody who's at 7-figure, 8-figure income level, and if you literally find out that these people have put time into, learning and growing. But here's my motivating fact, is the fact that ultimately the time is going to pass anyway. It's going to pass anyway. So it's like you just blink and then the day is gone. The time's going to pass anyway. But I cannot stress this enough. Ultimately, every single person should have a daily projection of where you're going to be in 30 to 60 to 90 days. And if you actually run the potentials, the possibilities from a compounding perspective, I mean, your numbers get really, really almost uncomfortable. They almost get uncomfortable. But you have to understand, if a person has the ability to make $200 a day trading, you have to grasp the fact that one of the best things I ever got out of watching live sessions is, especially when they were seeing live accounts, is realizing, oh my God, look at the numbers on these things. But the same trade that can generate $200, it can generate $200,000. We have to get out of our comfort zone to realize there's people that do that. And that was one of my first goals as a professional firefighter. My base income was $27,000 a year. Now, granted, it was 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago. But ultimately, within, I want to say 18 months, within a couple of years tops, I was generating more monthly than I was annually, which allowed me to retire at a very, very young age, and then have also the ability to have time. So I had a ton of times to travel and hang out with kids. So anyways, I see on the chat, how do you spell the author's name? I'm assuming you're talking about Covey. So it's Stephen Covey, and then Stephen R. Covey, Covey, in case you want that. But ultimately, in the end, if you look at what it is that I'm getting across, you need to have a system in place to where you are literally doing something every single day. I don't care if a person is running to the store. I don't care if they're doing housework, have an earpiece in. I have Alexa hanging out with me in the office. Shouldn't say that because she's going to respond to what I'm talking to her. But anyways, but I won't just say, hey, play Buena Vista Social Club, great Cuban music. It's something great to play in the background when you're reading, studying, or whatever else. I just say play Audible. And then she'll pick up right where I left off. And just like that, then when I leave the room, I'll just say pause. And she pauses. And then if I hear something that I want to write down, I'll just say rewind 10 seconds, and she'll go back, and then I can just replay it, and then write it and replay it, and then write it and replay it. And that's where I add these things to my list of reminders. I've been collecting a list of reminders, I want to say about 3 decades, and I put them in alphabetical order where I heard it. That person might not be the original person that made that quote or made that thought or idea. All I care about is where I heard it from. And then I can reference that and come back to that. So these are habits for life that people can create. So now if you take this mindset, and this applies to every single person, what I want you to ask yourself, or even just for fun, is ask yourself, out of the next 100 people you cross paths with, okay? I mean, be honest. Ask yourself, how many people do that? It'll blow you away. You have to be honest. It'll blow you away. If you look at, out of the next 100 people you cross paths with, how many are consistently feeding their mind, putting in an earpiece, listening to Stephen Covey, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Anthony Robbins, Wallace Wattles. I mean, I could go on. I have hundreds and hundreds of names, literally, people that probably never even heard of, but just constantly keep feeding that mind and constantly keep growing, because the reality is we don't know what we don't know. We have no idea. And something else that I wrote down along this lines that I really wanted to ask today is, just for fun, just to get some feedback, because I'm getting better at getting feedback from people. I want anybody in here, or anybody who has the initiative, what do you think your highest calling is in life? Highest calling in life. And I'm going to watch for some responses, see if I get it. I mean, what is your highest calling in life? Highest calling. This is a big one. So somebody throw in an answer on this one, anybody. I want to see what somebody puts out here. And I'm going to answer this question based on what I've heard and what I agree with. What is your highest calling in life? And this is also a question that realistically you want to, you really, the highest calling in life, you want to remind yourself this daily. What if you wrote this question down every single day? So I got to Caregive, Victoria, a Jayhawk motivational speaker. That's a powerful one because ultimately, you're impacting other people's lives. Give the opportunity to change the perspective of life of individuals in unfortunate situations. Yeah, that's powerful. Okay. So, I mean, in the simplest words that I can give you, okay? The simplest words, your highest calling in life is to unlock the potential of other people. If you really get that, if you really get that, unlock other people's potential. If you really digest what it is that I'm describing right now, you will consciously acknowledge the fact that people have no clue what their potential is. They have no idea. And that's when it becomes crystal clear that they're literally creating their own limitations. So all these challenges, all these struggles, all this drama in life, then you all of a sudden acknowledge the fact mentally that ultimately they're creating that. They're literally creating that drama because whatever you focus on magnifies. Whatever you focus on, you experience more of. It's almost like an amplifier. That's literally what you're experiencing in life. So ultimately, if the highest calling in life is to unlock other people's potential, which I think I probably heard that first from Jim Rohn, which was a very fitting open because I had no idea she was going to play a clip from Jim Rohn, which is one of my all-time life favorite speakers, okay, is Jim Rohn, but unlocking other people's potential. But here's the way you could look at this question in another way is you literally have to look at it saying, okay, first it comes me. First, I got to unlock my potential because I am nowhere near what my potential is. And the more that I unlock my potential and the more that you unlock your potential, that's going to affect your ability to unlock other people's potential. That's the key. And then people have freedom because you are not free in this country until you're not financially free. You're not free in this world until you're financially free. We live in one of the richest countries in the world. We have the ability to do incredibly spontaneous travel and be able to go out and just experience life and be able to experience cultures and just live. That's ultimately what it's all about because every man will die, but not every man truly lives. It's just truly live. But when you take life one day at a time, one basic day at a time, and then you literally use this time. You don't worry about yesterday. You don't worry about tomorrow. You focus on, okay, what are my goals? What would you do? These are power questions. These power questions I will revisit again and again and again and again. What would you do if you knew you could not fail? What would you do if success was guaranteed? Because the greatest obstacle to success in adult life is fear of failure. What would you do if you could not fail? Literally, it's like a magic genie thing. And then you literally write that stuff down. You write down whatever the physical goals, fitness goals, financial goals, spiritual goals, mental goals, because in the end, I think everybody wants quality of life. People want happiness. Well, and happiness is really one way that happiness, there's many ways happiness is achieved, but happiness a lot of times is achieved by giving up something that you want now for something you want down the road. And I mentioned this before, one of the greatest definitions of sacrifice is giving up something of a lower value or a higher value. So if I'm just doing nothing, if I'm just, entertaining myself with social media, Facebook, movies, there's all kinds of great stuff you get inspiration from, but ultimately looking at it from that context is having the ability to use that time to be able to sacrifice something. It's so clear when you put it that way, sacrifice something of lower value for something of higher value. The quote that I heard years ago is you almost always feel better after a run than before it. So a lot of times it's easier just not to do stuff. There's always a reason not to do it. But success, I think there's not a single person who's on this call, who doesn't have the ability to generate a 7-figure income. And a 7-figure income has nothing to do with the amount of money. It's who you become as a person. It's the growth that you achieve, because the more that you unlock your potential, the more that you can help unlock other people's potential. So in reality, that's really the key, is taking every day. And you know, the cool thing is I enjoy doing these on a weekly basis because my goal is to keep it definitely under 30 minutes, ideally more like 20 minutes, and just give some nuggets of what I can put out there. And I do want to put another thought too, just to add on. I'll mention this to Alyssa. I will not, unfortunately, be doing this call 2 weeks from today because I'm going back out to Colorado and I'm going to drive my mother back. She's moving back to the Midwest. So I volunteered and offered to drive her because she's getting older, to be easier, but it's kind of fun to have that freedom. So we'll be doing a call next Wednesday. Then we'll be picking up after that, which realistically might be getting into next year. So the reality is you're coming into the end of 2021 and you've literally got a few weeks left. And then just like that, it's going to be a new year. You have absolutely no clue where you're going to be sitting 365 days out, where you're going to be sitting a year from now. And I promise you this, you grow, okay? And again, set bigger goals. The challenge is people's goals are too small because the goals have to be big, because that's what gets you uncomfortable. That's what gets you to stretch. That's what gets you to grow. Okay, I was setting goals 30 years ago for $100,000 a year, and I achieved that. You know, but the reality is nowadays 7 figures is doable, and if it can be done, it should be done. You know, and on my journal, I have columns where I track where I'm at every single day. I break down yesterday's balance, and I write down what my goal is, and then I have boxes underneath that where I write down what is actually achieved, not just in profit, but also in income. Okay, so in other words, a withdrawal that's coming in and hitting my bank account the very next day, which does every single time. It's a beautiful thing. So you create that, but then I actually put down today's balance. But then from there, I take 1 week projections and I go out all the way into May. And if I told you what my numbers grow into, you wouldn't believe me. I wouldn't believe me actually years ago, but I do now because it's just a number. It's all it is. It's just a number. But can you imagine ultimately in the end, you cannot achieve levels like that without impacting other people and then giving them both time and money, because that's what freedom is. Freedom is having, we all want the same thing. We want time and money. We want the ability to where, and the only reason I decided to go to Colorado is because my mom was really stressed out, really, really stressed out. So without even hesitating, I'm like, listen, I'll just fly out there and drive you back then. You don't have to drive. Okay. And it's just nice to have that freedom to be able to not even have to worry about, okay, can I do this? Can I do that? Or whatever else. That's the way life should be lived. Life should be lived in a capacity to where you can go when you want, where you want, with who you want. But you have to understand you're already there. You're already there. You got to be there mentally before you're there almost in reality. It's just that we're already there, but there's always going to be certain limitations on that. You want to broaden those limitations. You want to raise it up to where you have, it's just giving you more choices. That is all. But it's critically important to keep life in perspective. You want to remind yourself. I posted a TikTok the other day about the fact that, you know, no matter how bad you think you have you at any given moment, someone has it way worse. Okay. And I firmly believe that it's millions. There's like 2 billion people on planet Earth that don't have access to a toilet, for God's sakes, let alone electricity or running water. We forget this type of stuff. When you actually put yourself, this is all I'm going to say to validate that statement. When you put yourself in a state of gratitude, you become unstoppable. Okay. When you put yourself in a state of gratitude and allow yourself to feel it, I'm talking the basic things, grateful for having water, grateful for having access to food, and grateful for having, use a list, just list. And that should be written down every day. And it blows me away that most people don't do this. The goals should be written down every day. I'm going to tell you that number is never going to change. 95% of people do not rewrite their daily goals. So ultimately, it's just a matter of having those daily goals, rewriting them every single day, and then always remember to do first things first, which ironically is, I believe Stephen Covey's got a book titled First Things First. I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. First things first. You want to do the stuff that ultimately in the end, I just write down a quote every single day that says, assume you will not do it later. Okay. And then I assume I won't do it later. So this ties into personal development, audio programs, reading, running, push-ups, exercise. It's basically the rocks in the jar that I reference a lot. You put the rocks in first, but it's not just about the growth, okay? Because remember, it's about unlocking people's potential, but it's not just about that. How do you feel? When you're doing these things, it creates momentum. It creates energy. Energy is created. I once heard from Anthony Robbins, motion creates emotion. So we know that when we move, we feel. That's when it goes. The more sedentary we are, the more lazy we feel. The more lethargic we are, the more lazy we feel. The more that we move, sometimes it's just a matter of getting up, moving, creating initiative and doing things. Then ultimately that just creates and then builds on top of that. But every single person should be in a position to where they realize that if they see themselves in the same position 90 days out, they're not thinking big enough. You got to really project and do some compounding, because we have the ability to compound in a way. And I'm going to close on this thought. Nowadays, whether somebody's active with trading or not, okay, it doesn't matter whether they're active with it or not. They still have the ability and potential to do it, but most won't take the initiative. We have the ability to essentially accomplish in 90 days. I'm going to stick with that for a long, long, long time. 90 days, you have the ability to literally, there's not a single person that couldn't get themselves completely financially free in 90 days. There's not a single person who couldn't generate an account that's generating income that far surpasses whatever job they have, whether it's hourly or salary or whatever else. And that literally opens up to where all of a sudden now they're in more control of their calendar. They're way more control of their calendar. So take the time and actually write out the goals, put the projections on it, and just focus on it on a daily basis. Make yourself think bigger. Get yourself uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable, but that's kind of how we grow. You have to get uncomfortable, because I think the biggest challenge people have is they keep themselves too comfortable. So my closing thought on this one is ultimately remember that life is completely what you make it. We're in complete control of our lives. Anybody ever has any questions or feedback or wants to contact me, feel free. If you don't know how to get a hold of Alyssa, feel free to direct message me, whatever. But get a hold of me. I can help anybody else with the process and growth and learning. If they want book tips or stuff like that, I will gladly help people. But along the way, I'll just keep plugging away and doing these the way that we're doing. But just remember that ultimately it's helping people grow. It's ultimately getting people to achieve their potential. And if that doesn't motivate somebody, I don't know what will, because people don't know what you know why people don't know what their potential is? Because they're just looking at their limitations. Got to stop looking at limitations. If we live at a time right now where we can do things and we can literally buy back our life in a short time frame, like 90 days, I'm going to put in the time. Okay, so I'm going to literally watch training after training after training, because repetition is some other skill. You watch something over and over again and you don't get it, it's kind of confusing. Keep watching it, and all of a sudden a light goes on. You're like, oh my God, this is ridiculously simple. But it's a matter of putting in the time. The people that put in the time will achieve the things that the people that don't put in the time don't do. Okay, so ultimately just remember that life is what you make it. I'm going to close on that thought. And again, I have a ton of respect for everybody who's on this and really just being here and continued growth. So with that, have a good day.